Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. We continue reading from the 40 principles of the religion, the 40 fundamentals of the religion, Al-Arba'in fi Usul Din by Imam Al-Ghazali rahimahullah. ونفعنا بهم في الدارين آمين آمين آمين. So it's the 40th chapter, the 40th principle, and it's on remembering death. And thus far, Imam Ghazali, practically part of some of the last things that we have read, that death separates one from that which he or she, of course, desires. And that the image of the body is like a net that one can catch with it the desires, the worldly desires. And depends on what one was doing during this life, and where his or her heart is, will be whether one is close or near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or far away. And even sleep in itself is the next of kin of the brother, as it is said in the text of death. However, it is of a much lesser degree. On those who claim that death is non-existence, and of course, this is really what the atheists would say today, that this is it. You have this life. We have evolved, and it's a very illogical, because the scientists amongst the atheists, whether they are astrophysicists, especially the astrophysicists, they realize that there was a time when there was a time, what we call time equals zero, which means there was no time, going back to the first talk about the Big Bang Theory. They know that there was no universe. That's what it is. And this complexity that we have, whether it's biological, the universe itself, which the Quran describes as having it's a greater creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than ourselves. So they will say that death is non-existence. This is it. There is nothing beyond this. Because as we talk about metaphysics, that which is not immediately present, it cannot be tested in a lab. But still, perhaps you say, the well-known opinion, according to the scholars, is that the human being is annihilated with death and then returned, and that the punishment of the grave is with fire, scorpions, and snakes. And what you have mentioned is contrary to this. Know that whoever says that the meaning of death is non-existence is veiled from the lowlands of blind following and the heights of spiritual insight altogether. As for his veiling from the peak of spiritual insight, he does not perceive what he does not see. As for his veiling from blind following You will know it by reciting Quranic verses and hadith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون فرحين بما آتاهم الله من فضله. Do not think that those who were killed in the way of Allah are dead. To the contrary, they are alive with their Lord and provided for, overjoyed by what Allah has given them from His bounty. Imam Al-Ghazali commented by saying, this is in reference to the eternally joyful. As for the eternally sorrowful, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam called them on the day of Badr when they were killed. This is the first battle, really. It's a very important topic. Here it's about speaking to the dead, but just let's spend a minute or two on Badr. And this is really very important about the history of these early conflicts. The idol worshippers in Mecca tried to, and they succeeded in, first of all, in killing some of the followers of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they were very few. The slaves that they have who became Muslims, they had boycotted the nascent Muslim community. It's a very small, weak Muslim community. They boycotted them in the absolute sense. They spent 3 years in the valley of Abu Talib, Shab Abu Talib. No trade with them, no food, no social relations. These were very harsh years. And you talk about the first migration, literally we talk about political asylum. The early Muslims went to Abyssinia, to Ethiopia today, to Abyssinia, and they found refuge there. 2 waves. The second wave, they went from there to Medina, to the Prophet ﷺ, already made it in 622. That's the beginning of the Hijri calendar. Then the Meccans sought to eradicate the Muslim. It was a zero-sum game. But let's remind people, the readers, the listeners, that all these battles took place in or around Medina, in the vicinity. Badr, the first battle, then Uhud. And literally Uhud is on your way to the airport in Medina. From the airport, it's a couple of minutes from the Mosque of the Prophet, the hotels there. It's not very far. You could see it. It's it's a massive mountain, and the Prophet ﷺ said that Mount Uhud is this is Uhud, referring to Mount Uhud. Uh, he loves us, and we love it. Um, but let me stress the Battle of the Trench surrounding the immediate surrounding the Medina. It would be good if visitors of Medina would ask a guide, someone, a historian, local people who know all these places, to know that history of Islam. So the Muslims did not go after the Meccans. That's very important. And let's remember quite few things. And I would like to the first thing, the truce of Hudaybiyah. Yes, it was originally for 10 years, but the reason why the Prophet ﷺ concluded that truce was because he did not want to shed blood. The companions were not happy with it. Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab, it was very straightforward. He knew that, not knowing the unknown, but they believed that as a military force they could really take the Mecca by force. Subhanallah, Mecca was taken practically without bloodshed, and there was general amnesty. There are details, but this is really very important. It's the holiest place in Islam, and general amnesty, no bloodshed, no fighting. Subhanallah. Medina, we cannot say that there was a conflict anyhow. I mean, the Muslims made it to Medina. I think it was Sayyidina Mus'ab bin Umair who was the early, you know, da'i who called for Islam, and the arrival of the Prophet ﷺ in Medina, it was really, you talk about simply arriving there. There is, it was a fath, if you will, a spiritual one, but there was no conflict at all, zero. I mean, he was received. The Muslims were received by the indigenous people of Medina, who became known as the Ansar. In the text here of this book, as the helpers. Jerusalem itself, I'm talking about the Muslims. Jerusalem has been sacked by different armies. You talk about the Egyptians, talk about the Persians, you talk about the Romans, the Crusaders later on during Islamic rule. All of them, with no exception, did shed blood, and they destroyed, and they caused corruption, damage, much damage, except for the Muslims. Around 637, the Muslims arrived in Jerusalem, and Patrick Sophronius concluded a treaty with the Muslims. It was Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab, of course, and we have the Pact of Umar, and it's an interesting topic in itself. Most of these narratives that circulate around about the claiming to be the Pact of Umar are not correct. Stick to the shortest version, but it's again, it's a topic unto itself. but there was no bloodshed. This is what I would like to say. During the time of Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, radiallahu anhu, there were battles like with the companions of the Prophet ﷺ before Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab arrived in Jerusalem. There were battles around, but not in Jerusalem itself. Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi is the same. There were battles around, but not in Jerusalem itself. Now follow the logic. Mecca, no bloodshed. Medina was a beautiful entry and establishing, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitated, and the arrival of Muslims and the establishment of this nascent community of believers, which became the polity, and then Jerusalem during the time of Umar al-Khattab, no bloodshed, and then Jerusalem during Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, and no bloodshed. There were battles around in the vicinity, but not in these three holy places. And there is no law. There is no law that indicates that the future fath will be without bloodshed. But I hope so. I hope that this line is going to manifest itself, inshallah, with no bloodshed. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, the ratio was 1 to 3 Muslims to Meccans, who were about 1,000 strong army compared to the Muslims. Then the Prophet ﷺ addressed those who were killed from amongst the idol worshippers. Oh, so and so. Oh, so and so. Mentioning each one by their leaders. With each one of their leaders who were killed. I have found what my Lord promised me to be true. Have you found what your Lord promised you to be true? It was said, O Messenger of Allah, do you call out to dead people? So he said, by him in whose hand is my soul. You do not hear my speech any better than them. However, they are incapable of responding. This hadith is agreed upon, narrated by Al-Bukhari and Muslim. So they did, and this is really this is one of their, they could hear. Allah's Messenger said this particular hadith has a weak chain of narrators. Death is resurrection. Whoever dies, his resurrection has been established. He meant by this the minor resurrection. If you desire more information, this is what Imam Al-Ghazali is saying, then seek it from the book of Patience from the Revival of the Islamic Sciences, of course, the Ihya. The hadith signifying the perpetuation of the souls of the dead and their feeling of what occurs in this world are also many. As for your statement, the well-known opinion concerning the punishment of the grave is pain by way of fire, scorpions, and snakes. This is correct. It is like that. However, I feel, and this is still Imam Ghazali, I feel you are incapable of understanding it or comprehending its secret and reality. Nevertheless, I call your attention to an example of it as a way of sparking your interest in knowing realities and working earnestly to prepare for the matter of the afterlife. Indeed, it is great news that you turn away from. The Prophet ﷺ said, and there's a hadith that was uh, that Ibn Hibban said that it has a good chain of narrators. He said, the Prophet ﷺ, in his grave, the believer is in a plush garden, and it has been spread out from him 70 cubits. His face is illuminated until it is like the full moon. Do you know what the verse, إِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكَ, indeed, he will have a hard life, was revealed about? The companion said, Allah and His Messenger know best. He said, the punishment of the disbeliever in his grave. 99 vipers are put over him. Do you know what the vipers are? The word in Arabic is tinnin. Uh, so the image uh, is like a massive python, like anaconda. But there is something that Imam Al-Ghazali will, the way he explains this is very interesting. 99 serpents, each one has 9 heads. They strike him, bite him, and spew venom into his body until the day people are resurrected. The text of the hadith and that Ibn Hibban mentions is slightly different, but the meaning is pretty much the same. So uh, look at this hadith and know that this is a truth clearer than physical vision from the perspective of those people of spiritual insight who have gleaned it. The ignorant person denies it. He says, I look into my grave and do not see that at all. I think there should be a correction here of the translation. I look into my grave, I look into his grave. Okay. أنظر في قبره. Because how do you look into your grave? The ignorant person should know that this viper is not external to the essence of the deceased person. What I mean is this is Imam Ghazali again. What I mean is the essence of his spirit, not the essence of his body. For indeed, the spirit is that which feels pain or pleasure. In fact, before his death, the viper was established deep within him. However, he was never able to sense its bite due to a numbness that was inside of him through the dominance of his desires. He therefore feels its bite after death. Realize that this viper is composed of his qualities, and the number of its heads is commensurate to the number of his blameworthy traits and desire for worldly pleasure. The origin of this viper is love of this world, love of the world, and heads branch off from it according to whatever branches off from love of the world, whether envy, hatred, ostentation, pride, scheming, cheating, love of status and wealth, animosity, or malice. So each one will become a head, biting him, spewing venom, etc., causing pain. The base of this is known through spiritual insight. As a consequence, the heads that bite are many. But this is really an interesting um, an interesting topic, really. There are traditions about these there are traditions, prophetic, traditions about hellfire, whether it has snakes and scorpions, and the hadith that Imam Ahmad mentioned about that the Prophet ﷺ said that hellfire has like mass. I'm going to liberally speak about these snakes where are massive. The same thing about these scorpions, but the hadith is in the chain of narrators is Ibn Lahiya. Well, despite the fact that he was trustworthy, but as a person, but his narration of the prophetic traditions at one point became problematic. He was a judge in Egypt. Yes. Yeah. And some scholars said that this hadith cannot be a strong tradition. Yeah. So, but at any rate, there's many scholars spoke about this. There are those who said it is that the hadith itself is sahih, wallahu alam. So you have scholars who are aware on both sides of the argument. So in fact, before his death, the viper was established deep within him, like his traits, his character, his sins, his lust after that which is haram. All of these created these multiple heads. And as Imam Al-Ghazali said, he therefore feels its bite after death. Realize that the viper is composed of his qualities, and the number of its heads is commensurate to the number of blameworthy traits and desire for worldly pleasure. Yes. And he mentioned these, negative traits, all from within. The envy is the hatred, ostentation, pride, scheming, cheat, all are problems from within and not from without. Affairs of the heart, that's what they are. And the only way to know it is through spiritual insight. As a consequence, the heads that bite are many. As for limiting their number to 99, it is understood only through the light of prophethood. This viper is set up in the depths of the disbeliever's heart, not merely due to the ignorance of his belief, but rather due to what belief or disbelief invites to. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, ذلك بأنهم استحبوا الحياة الدنيا على الآخرة. That is because they preferred the life of the world over the afterlife. Also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أذهبتم طيباتكم في حياتكم الدنيا واستمتعتم بها. You exhausted all your good in your worldly life and enjoyed it there. If this viper were external to the essence of the deceased person, as you believe, it would be easier, for it is conceivable that the viper would go away from him, or he away from it. No, to the contrary, it is settled in the depths of his heart and bites him with a force greater than what you understand of the viper's bite. It is essentially his qualities that were with him during his life, just as the viper that bites the heart of the passionate lover when he sells his slave girl is essentially the passion that was lodged in his heart, and as mold is lodged in rock. However, he is unaware of it, so what used to be the reason for his pleasure becomes the cause of his pain. This is the secret of the Prophet's hadith, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is only your deeds return to you. And the full hadith is that Muslim narrated, يا عبادي إنما هي أعمالكم أحصيها لكم ثم أوفيكم إياها فمن وجد خيرا فليحمد الله ومن وجد غير ذلك فلا يلومن إلا نفسه. So it's really from you. It's not from without. يوم تجد كل نفس ما عملت من خير محضرا وما عملت من سوء تود لو أن بينها وبينه أمدا بعيدا ويحذركم الله نفسه والله رؤوف بالعباد. A day when every soul will find whatever it did of good present and whatever it did of bad. He will wish that between them were a great distance. Allah warns you about Himself, and Allah is merciful to the slaves. I think this is enough for this particular session. We'll return to this particular hadith we mentioned in English only. The part that is mentioned here, it is only your deeds return to you. We'll just go over the whole hadith inshallah tomorrow. جزاكم الله خيرا سبحانك وبحمدك نشهد أن نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.